Threat Hunting Thursday. I'm David, founder of Base, and let's just go ahead and jump in. So today I wanted to start threat hunting in a little different way. So I wanted to jump um, into our Base Early Alert threat intelligence feed, and what I want to do there is find something from recent time and pivot into our platform and see what else can we identify. Can we identify a larger campaign that's maybe not yet identified? And then we'll see where we go from there. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I think I've got main screen shared. And now you can still hear me, but we're looking at our Postman. So if you go into, just as a mention here, if you go to our homepage, you can go to our API docs, and this has all of this information. You can run any of these things in Postman. Most of them require API keys. There are free API keys. You just need to contact us, and you can get one. But what we're going to do is use our intelligence feed, which if you go to our homepage, you can try our intelligence feed by going here and entering in your information and requesting a trial for enterprise customers, right? Not for somebody to use privately, but if you have interest in that, please go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get the information pretty much automatically. Anyway, so let's actually use recent analysis. So this was a little bit earlier today, but I had one that I thought was interesting to start pivoting from. So what we did was we called our API, our feed API, and we are asking for all types of intelligence that we have, all types of attacks in the last 15 minutes. And we want to include our TLS information, include our domain to IP mappings, include our indicators of compromise, which could be internal or from external sources, and then include our observables, which are our site fingerprints that allow us to identify larger campaigns. So we had one that I thought was pretty interesting. So this is just one result. It's actually bigger than this, but we have, the URL that was submitted was this medicareoffersnow.com/HG access, and we visited this final link, which is at the same site, but of course has an additional ID in here. So that automatically happened. We are redirected, and so we can actually see in our UI. We'll pivot to that in a second. What we saw, but in summary, we had our intelligence feed. We are identifying that there wasn't any following on activity that we were able to automatically identify, but we did identify that it's targeting United States Postal Service, USPS, and we captured the TLS information and IP mapping and other information, including our observables. So let's go ahead and pivot into our UI and look at that. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so we can see it a little bit clearer. But what we've got here is this was a screen that was loading as we took the screenshot, but this is clear as day, USPS, so correct there. We identify USPS tracking, and it looks like we requested sensitive information. And so we can see that Medicare Offers Now is not new. It's 877 days old. So like that's 2 and change years old, right? So it's likely, right, because of that, it's likely a compromised site or a long-lived malicious site. In this case, I don't know for sure, but if I had to just guess, I would say it's probably a compromised site, or maybe one that had been abandoned. Although the Medicare Offers Now kind of makes me think that maybe they're trying to exploit the urgency factor to convince people that they should go ahead and sign up for something. That said, obviously Medicare Offers Now has nothing to do with USPS. So let's go ahead and pivot and see what else we've seen with this. So we have our observables, which again are site fingerprints. They're essentially identifying the structure, the links, the destinations on a site, and making that a shareable hash that we can then use to find other ones that are similar or the same as that site. So we got those, they're automatically calculated on every single thing that we analyze. But let's go ahead and look just quickly to see what the links look like, because sometimes the links aren't terribly interesting or aren't terribly unique. And so the link and destination IDs might not be terribly useful. In this case, we got cns.usps.com, usps.com, usps.com, a whole bunch of different things, right? So these are probably interesting as a link ID. But let's first check the structural ID. Have we seen this exact page anywhere else? Okay, so it looks like we haven't seen this exact page anywhere else. We see just that one, so that's useful to know. But what about the links? Have we seen these links being used anywhere else? Okay, so we have. And it's been approximately 6 weeks that we've seen this activity being live. We've seen it just 5 times, so it's a pretty small campaign that's identifying activity. So let's see what we've seen. So the first two look like they're the same, at least on the destination that was submitted. But let's see what else we've seen. So we've seen funlearncompany.com and bizfix.in. Now, as I said, this has been going on for about 6 weeks. We don't have 6 weeks of data that we make available in the UI right now, at least, but let's just see if we have any more information here, just to see if there are any more that'll show up here. Doesn't look like any more are going to pop up. So let's go ahead and look at these couple. So we've got funlearncompany.com, bizfix.in, and I want to also pivot into these destinations and look at them. Okay, so funlearncompany.com, this has actually been seen since June 5th. So we're going a little bit farther back. It's been seen 80 plus times. And what have we seen recently? So a bunch of different funlearncompany.com examples. Let's see if we can go a little bit farther back. Let's pivot to the second page. Okay, so there was just one more, and that was from Friday, August 18th. So it looks like it might have been down and then came back up. So that's interesting to know about. But that one's been around since June. So that's interesting. There could have been other attacks leveraging that malicious, maybe not malicious, but possibly compromised site from farther back, and they could actually be completely unrelated attacks. So useful to be aware of. How about over here? So we've got this bizfix.in. How many times have we searched it? 17. It's been around just this week. So we have pretty new behavior here. And it looks like we have the same kind of ID-based information. It looks like we've got the same ID. Oh, now we got a different one. So I'm kind of curious to see, does this look different? Let's see, was this the one? Okay, I think that was the one that yeah, okay. So that was that one. So it looks like either the site wasn't live or somehow we got a link that was a little bit broken when that was identified. So really interesting. Let's see if, just out of curiosity, are there any others like that? Because that's one of the powerful things, is have we seen this kind of activity elsewhere? So this may or may not be interesting, because what we do is we take the structure of a site, but if there's not a whole lot of content on that site, we might not be able to have enough stuff to really identify something as uniquely interesting, but let's just look and see if any of these are also interesting. So we've got, again, kind of fatal error. And we got a fatal error over here. I would say these are probably not related. There might be a similar kind of problem, but they're likely not related to this campaign. So useful to know, but probably not useful as expanding this campaign. So let's go back and see. All right, so we had that bizfix.in. The rest of the bizfix.ins all looked, well, with the exception of the one that was not yet up, look to be live. So this is, a more complete view. This was an attack that has even more information. And so we see a particular tracking number here that might be interesting. Let's see, because now, right, earlier when we looked at it, this is an example of the earlier one. So this structure is different than the structure over here. Let's see if this one has been seen elsewhere. Okay, so we've seen this one 24 times. And can we see what else we've seen? Let's see, when did we first see it? So this is all the way back to June now. So we've now seen back to June. Let's see if we can go back to the last 4 weeks and just see if we can identify any more. They might have happened all farther back and then nothing in between. Okay, so we got aig.apps, aiggroup.com. That sounds like it seems to be targeted. Let's just pivot on one of those. And let's also open, see if there are any more. Okay, so we had 2 more that fell in our 4-week range. They all matched at aig.apps.aigroup.com. Okay, so over here we have same behavior, not a surprise. And one thing that we can look at is it a different tracking number? So we see 7953, and then over here we see 65814. So different tracking number. So that's interesting. Maybe they're randomly generating it, but definitely interesting to see. So we know in each of these cases that we're targeting USPS. Some of the other things that we can do are pivot on, let's say this, reg.usps.com, and see what else do we know about attacks that are currently happening that are leveraging this reg.usps.com. So in this case, we actually have knowledge about it. Reg.usps.com, we see a lot. Not a particular surprise. We've seen it since February. February is probably when we turned on this functionality and started tracking it, because that was right around the time that we launched the first iteration of base. But so we've seen 15,000 times in between then, and we haven't analyzed that site itself, which is not surprising, but we've seen it on a lot of other sites. So we see, USPS.com, we see margaritapuertosherry.com, we see a bunch of USPS.com. So actually, this is an interesting point to show here. One of the things, so we just picked on one that is www.usps.com. What we're likely to see, let's see if I'm right. Yep. So what we're likely to see, and what we are seeing in this case, is we actually came from a site that was probably at one point malicious, but at the time that base crawled it, it was no longer malicious. So we see www.usps.com is where we ended up going. So one of two things: either it was no longer malicious, USPS.com took it down, or some service provider that they used took it down, and it redirected to USPS.com now because they're the rightful owners, or there's the possibility that the attacker is looking for coming from a particular location, or some other way to filter who they're actually going to allow to see the phishing page, And so that activity wasn't identifiable here. But let's see if we can pivot and find out, did we actually see that activity? Did we ever see it actually live? So we first saw this September 13th. And it looks like, aha. So you can see here in this quick heads up display, we've got the submitted URL. When you add /tracking, then we see that it's going to the malicious site. And this one happens to be a well-known malicious campaign called USPS Deliveries Failed Scam. And we can actually see, so 3EB is the structural ID associated with that. So here's that ID. We can go look. What do we know about that? So this has been going on since August 10th, at least from what our system's seen, and looks like it's targeting USPS customers. And we have more information at the campaign details level. But this is just in the last 24 hours, we've seen 169 unique destinations associated with this. So really, really common. Let's go ahead and pivot on that. So this is what the screenshot looks like, which isn't surprising because we're seeing the same kind of loading behavior. We've seen this 4,000 times since August 10th. So now we're 4 and change weeks into this. Just in the last 24 hours, we've seen 169 sites that match this correctly. And now we can pivot and see, what are those? So here are some of those examples. So we see USSPSU.net for those who are, I guess, still dyslexic. There's USPS backwards in there. FL Post Office, USPSNS, USUSJL, USPS ePosty. So all of these are all matching these indicators. And we of course reanalyze sites that are still live to be able to keep track of them. But I would bet that a lot of these are probably brand new. So that one's old. Of course, the demo gods have smited me. But let's see if any of these other ones are not old. All right, so that's September 13th. This one, September 12th. So they're all pretty new. When did we first identify? Oh, well, we know that, September 12th. And so here's an important point. We did a whole bunch of analysis. We started from one USPS campaign, one USPS phishing portal that wasn't part of a campaign, and we pivoted in and connected a bunch of different campaigns that are all associated with a known campaign. The interesting point here is we could actually connect all of them with just one or two additional identifiers, and then this attack would capture more of those as one campaign because they're all related. The interesting point here is, so this was the first time we saw this site. It was 0 days old when our system analyzed it, and we already had an indicator of compromise for it. Not because we had to tell someone about USPLGH.top, which, by the way, if you are using some sort of algorithm that looks for USPS or some version of USPS, this won't match. But the interesting point is this was the first time that it happened, and we already knew that it was bad. We didn't need to do any kind of fancy additional work. It was literally the first time it was seen, already bad. So that's kind of the really, really big takeaway for our observables or site fingerprints capability is if you just have the HTML of a site, even if it's not live, if you're a third-party hosting provider or a web hoster, if you have the content that somebody wants to publish as a site, but it's not yet live, you can actually upload that to base here, and you can choose that right now, and you can upload it, and we'll automatically do that analysis and be able to identify what did we know about this. And so you could actually stop an attack, a campaign like this one, before it ever goes live. So we could go figure out, who owns or where is all of this stuff hosted, and actually help them potentially stop these attacks before they ever go live. Could be really, really powerful stuff. That's even more true if you're a Cloudflare or a Glitch or a Replit or other platform out there that hosts content and would be able to see potentially that content before it ever hits a live resolvable IP address. So that's really powerful, and I think can potentially change the way security works going forward, to stop those attacks before they ever go live without any need to identify the name in the URL or the name in the domain. One thing that I wanted to highlight that we're not yet doing, but that we're going to be doing very soon is, so we're going to make Base Investigator, the UI that you're looking at, there will always be a free tier, 100% always. There will be a free tier that'll be available to anybody to search. But what we're going to do is start making more functionality available to paid accounts. And these aren't going to be, thousands of dollars paid accounts. These are going to be small monthly cost subscription level accounts. And what we'll be able to do is start creating a community that is able to tag things. So for example, say Base didn't yet identify a campaign that should be tracked. We'll add the ability to say, hey, add a tag to this particular observable, to our site fingerprints. Add a tag to this, for example, here, add tag, and say that it's brand name.usps. And that way we can track that and be aware of it. And then we'll make it searchable so that you can come over here and say, tags contains brand name.usps as an example. And then you'll be able to find the things that match that. And again, for that, the search functionality here will make available to anybody, but the ability to tag will make available to paid users. And what we'll do on top of that is very likely create a streaming view that'll be available for customers to be able to search in real time what's happening, what's going on, and then be able to filter based on the different tags, based on different keywords, and so on and so forth, brand names, etc., to be able to do some really powerful things as time goes on. So that is coming soon. And if that's interesting to you, I really, really recommend reach out and get on the waiting list of people who can start testing that functionality out. I expect to have it done within the month. And it's something that will, I think, really change the way people are able to track attacks. Because remember, let's see if I have I don't know if I have it memorized. Nope, I don't have it over here. Let me really quickly pull it up down here. Really, really useful to be able to do. One more second. It's really useful to be able to track things with tags, because we'll be able to start saying, hey, this is, for example, hunting.opendir. And we'll be able to say, hey, we've seen this 34,000 times. what are some of the most recent ones? So we've got this, all of these different sites. All of these at the time that they are analyzed were openers. And I'd bet that some of these, at the very least, will turn into interesting sites, but they're not yet interesting. So being able to track that kind of stuff is really powerful. And it seems as though my dogs decided that it should be the end of our live stream. So I wanted to say thank you, and let's hopefully do this again next week. All right.